Welcome back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kanan Becker, and today we talk about 10 hidden gem horror movies you need to see.
Beside us.
What the hell happened here?
And with that, let's get to the list.
Trick or treat.
Anything for Jackson is a 2020 Canadian supernatural horror movie. Directed by Justin G. Dyke and written by Keith Cooper. It stars Sheila McCarthy, Julian Richings, and Constantina Montelos. The story is about an elderly couple who hatch a supernatural scheme to resurrect their dead grandson through abducting a pregnant woman.
Hello, my name is Audrey, and this is my husband Henry. We don't want to hurt you or your baby. We feel this would be the best way for you to go missing.
This is a really unique movie. The overall design of it, the story, it is a small film. It's not like, a huge idea or concept. It all takes place mostly in just this one location, but the way it goes about it, the story and the characters are what really drive this along. Because you can't help but just fall in love with this couple. Even though what they're doing is pretty awful, you come to find out why, and you do understand, and you can't help but just pull for them and root for them, even though you know what they're doing isn't okay. And for a small movie, it has some great scenes, some really interesting imagery, stuff that'll stick with you. But in general, it's just a fun ride, a well-written story, and one that I think you definitely should check out. Feed Me is a 2022 comedy horror movie, written and directed by Adam Leader and Richard Oakes. It stars Neil Ward, Christopher Mulvin, and Hannah Al-Rashid. Following the death of his wife, a heartbroken man spirals into an abyss of depression and finds himself in the home of a deranged cannibal who convinces him to take his own life in the most horrific way imaginable.
What if I said I could take it all away? So what are you saying?
Consensual human consumption.
This is a very dark, weird, just uncomfortable movie, but also just a lot of fun. There is some great macabre, dark, twisted humor to it. It's one of those movies that makes your skin crawl, just makes you wince and even maybe gag at times, while you can't help but laugh and just be entertained by what you're seeing. And it is loosely inspired by some real situations, stories that really happened that are kind of similar, but this is definitely doing its own thing and kind of imagining upon those real stories. But the real star, what makes this movie a can't miss, is the performance of Neil Ward. He is just amazing in it. He is so fun to watch, and his performance really surprised me because he is one character for a big portion of this movie and then completely flips a switch and turns into something totally different and is absolutely terrifying in this role. But it's a twisted, macabre, just fantastic little movie that I highly, highly recommend.
Leave me alone!
Nothing without me.
No more Daniel, no more Daniel.
Daniel Isn't Real is a 2019 psychological horror movie. Directed by Adam Egypt Mortimer, it stars Miles Robbins, Patrick Schwarzenegger, and Sasha Lane. A troubled college freshman suffers a violent family trauma, causing him to resurrect his charismatic childhood imaginary friend, Daniel.
It's common for people to see things that aren't real.
I didn't know you'd be here. You needed my help.
You shouldn't be afraid of your imagination.
This movie is colorful, creative, bizarre, and twisted. It goes in a lot of different directions and it'll really keep you guessing all the way to the end because nothing is just cut and dry in this. And you'll be questioning who is what and what is reality for most of it. But the performance from Patrick Schwarzenegger is what really makes this little movie shine. He's over the top, he's wild, he pushes the boundaries, but he's very entertaining. But that goes into a point where he becomes disturbing and uncomfortable and will definitely keep you on the edge of your seat. But ultimately, it starts to become more twisted and the character he's playing becomes more and more unhinged and unsettling. But I think it's a great little mind bender that's definitely worth adding to your list.
People, it's not a gift, is he? Then why was it given? I'm not afraid of you, is he? You will be.
Hellbender is a 2021 horror movie, written, directed, and starring John Adams, Zelda Adams, and Toby Poser. The story follows a mother and daughter rock band living in an isolated woodland home, whose relationship is challenged when the daughter encounters other teenagers. This is such a cool movie. This is what I appreciate and love so much in indie horror. Movies like this that are literally made by a family and they make everything. They do every element of their movies. And this is my favorite from what I've seen of theirs, but there's such a creativity in them. They feel so artsy and just beautifully shot, beautifully directed. There is this real chemistry between them all, and it makes sense because they're a real family, and it does translate on screen. But the music's great in this. The pacing of it is really interesting. It's twisted and bizarre and goes in some really dark, uncomfortable directions. This is a creative, well put together, artsy movie that definitely flies under the radar and is one you really need to see. It Stains the Sands Red is a 2016 Canadian-American horror movie. Directed by Colin Minahan and written by Minahan and Stuart Ortiz. It stars Brittany Allen, Juan Rendinger, and Merwin Mondesir. The story is about a woman relentlessly pursued through the desert outside of Las Vegas by a single zombie. So I mention this quite often that zombie movies have just been done to death, and I get it. Like everybody else, we're just kind of sick of zombie movies. They seem to be the same and not really doing anything new, and it's just a genre that's just done to death, and I get it. I am right there with you. I'm sick of them. But I will argue that when they're done right, zombie movies still have a place. And this is one of the most original, creative, fun and entertaining, as well as emotionally heart-wrenching at times. Just a well-done movie in the zombie outbreak space that you will see. And it's such a simple premise. It doesn't at all seem like there would be much to this. But I'm telling you, this movie will surprise you because you got to give it a chance. The first 20 minutes, it starts out and you're just kind of like, this looks pretty low budget. Like, I don't really know if this is going to be anything. But then it takes off, and the character development, the performance by Brittany Allen, the different scenarios that play out. There's so many surprises in this. It's just a wonderful movie, and it doesn't even matter that it's to do with zombies or horror or any of that. It's just a well-done movie, period. This is a brilliant movie that I think is an absolute must-watch for any fan of horror.
I can't wait to kill her.
All Eyes is a 2022 dark comedy horror movie. Written and directed by the Greenlee brothers. It stars Jasper Hammer, Ben Hall, and Danielle Yvonne Ploger. The story is about a disgraced podcaster who interviews an eccentric farmer who claims to have a monster living in the woods near his home.
Look, I don't like you, but my wife really did. Because of that, and only that, I think it's fitting that you be the one to tell my story.
This movie is a real gem. I just adore it. It is really a surprise. It goes in a lot of different directions and takes some pretty interesting twists where you're going along thinking you're watching one kind of movie and then it just completely changes and goes in a different direction, and then at another point switches again and goes back into this other way. It's just a lot of fun and really creative. And like so often we see in these indie horror movies, what makes them worth seeing, it isn't the big explosions, it isn't the big sets, it isn't where the money lies, because they're small. They don't have the money to do that. So what makes for a great indie horror movie is the characters, the story, what it does unique, and does it suck you in? Does it keep you interested and engaged? And this does as good of a job as any little horror movie I've seen in recent memory. It has great characters that you immediately engage with and just want to see them succeed and want to see where the story takes them. There's humor to it, but it isn't necessarily laugh out loud kind of humor. It's more of just interesting, amusing situations and a few little jokes here and there. But for the most part, it's actually pretty intense and will keep you engaged and on the edge of your seat through most of it. This movie's a blast and one you definitely need to see.
What the hell happened here?
Dead Birds is a 2004 Western horror movie. Directed by Alex Turner, it stars Henry Thomas, Nikki Acox, Patrick Fugit, and Michael Shannon. A group of Confederate soldiers hole up in an abandoned plantation after robbing a bank and find themselves at the mercy of supernatural forces.
Hey, come look at this.
What the hell is that?
Looks like a wild boar or something.
Let's move on, shall we?
This one's a little different than some of the other ones on this list because this isn't a micro budget, really small indie movie. This is a bigger budget with well-known actors. It's well written, it's well shot. I mean, you can definitely see the budget in this. It's not one that you would really think would be so underrated, but it is. I mean, this is one you very rarely, if ever, hear anyone talk about. And to be honest, I hadn't even heard of this movie until a year or so ago when you guys started mentioning it to me and saying that I needed to check it out. But it's interesting, it's unique, it's captivating, it's twisted and macabre and very mysterious and uncomfortable and does some things that, at least for me, caught me off guard and surprised me. It's a well done, exciting, and entertaining horror movie that you should definitely add to your list. You Won't Be Alone is a 2022 internationally produced folk horror movie. Written and directed by Goran Stilevsky in his directorial debut. It stars Sarah Klomoska, Anna Maria Marinka, and Numi Rapace. In 19th century Macedonia, a young girl is kidnapped and then transformed into a witch by an ancient spirit. Curious about life as a human, she uses her powers to understand what it feels like to be human. I was fortunate enough back in 2022 to go see this at a little art house movie theater near me. And it was in a real rundown theater. It's a cool theater, but it's very rundown, very old, not in the greatest part of town. But it's one of those experiences that if you're a film lover, and especially for indie horror, it's hard to even express to you how wonderful and just pure it feels. But it's one of those experiences that if you ever get a chance to do, definitely go do it. There's just something magical about it, about seeing this little movie that no one else is talking about, that nobody else knows about. And especially if you're lucky enough to see one that is amazing like this one is. And this isn't a heart-pounding, exciting kind of horror movie at all. This is definitely one that's for an acquired taste type of people that are into the art house, slow burn, dread-filled movies that just slowly move along and little by little kind of pull you into this dread-filled, anxiety-driven, uncomfortable world. But this is a dramatic, emotional, layered movie with wonderful performances by this whole cast. It's one of those movies that's almost more about the visuals and the atmosphere and the mood than it is dialogue or story, because it's a fairly simple story. There isn't a ton to it, but yet it feels extremely complex. It feels like there's so many different things that are going on here, so many different things that it's trying to say, so many different topics that it's talking about in one way or another. For the right audience, this is a special movie. So if you're into art house, slow burn, creepy horror movies, you definitely need to see this one. The Harbinger is a 2022 supernatural horror movie. Directed by Andy Minton, it stars Gabby Beans, Emily Davis, and Raymond Anthony Thomas. Plagued by horrific nightmares, a woman enters a hellish dreamscape to confront her greatest fears.
It's like any dream. I can move around, but something else is making my choices. Then I get the bad feeling that he's there.
This was my biggest surprise of last year. It really flew under the radar, and it still does. Just very few people know of this. But it's well shot, well directed, it's well paced and edited. But the performances here, especially from Gabby Beans, are just incredible. You cannot help but just feel the intensity from her, just the layers of emotion. I really hope to see her do more things, because the performance in this, I'm telling you, it is really that good. But this is twisted and dark and uncomfortable and talks about issues, things that a lot of us went through in 2020 that are still, at least for some of us, we're still dealing with to this day. Just the feelings of loneliness, of isolation, just it deals with that kind of stuff and talks about those kind of issues in a horror type of way better than any other movie I've seen since the pandemic. And I'm one of those people that just, if I hear that something has to do with the pandemic, I'm right away just like, yeah, I don't care. I lived through it. I don't want to see a movie about it. I don't want to think about it. I just, that's just not my thing. So I get it if you hear that and you're like turned off. But I'm telling you, I think this movie would surprise you, because the way it handles it, the way it puts it into a horror twist, I think is fantastic, phenomenally well done. But it's gritty and dark and uncomfortable with some visuals that'll stick with you long after you've seen it. I think this is a fantastic movie that you absolutely need to see.
You will serve me for the rest of your life.
Chained is a 2012 Canadian psychological horror movie. Directed by Jennifer Lynch and based on a screenplay by Damien O'Donnell. It stars Vincent D'Onofrio, Eamon Farron, and Gina Phillips. A young man held captive by a cab-driving serial killer must make a life or death choice between following in his captor's footsteps or breaking free.
Hey, hon, it's us. We are in a cab and we're on the way home. Love you.
Excuse me, that was our exit?
Mom? I've got a child back here and you're beginning to scare the bejesus out of me.
Okay, big warning up front. I've talked about this one a couple times now on the channel, and each time I have, I've heard great feedback. A lot of you guys love this movie, but then I've also heard some people that are like, I wish I hadn't have watched that. So I don't mean to scar anyone that doesn't want to be. I don't want to suggest a movie that is just not for you. So just a warning, this movie is very, very, very dark, very uncomfortable, just very twisted, and it's not so much that it shows you these gross visuals or haunting imagery per se, but it's more of the things that happen, the concepts and ideas, and just the story in general, it's about as dark and fucked up as you're gonna see. But with that being said, Vincent D'Onofrio is incredible in this. He will give you nightmares. Like, this is seriously one of the most intimidating, terrifying performances I've seen, period. I mean, it's right up there with a lot of the most dark, twisted characters we've seen in movies. But it's also well acted by the rest of the cast. The way it's shot, it's expertly put together. I mean, this is done by Jennifer Lynch, so you know it's a well put together movie, but it's also well written. The dialogue and the pacing, just the way that it's put together, it will have an impact. So if you're looking for a fun horror movie, this is probably not the right choice. But if you want something twisted, dark, demented, and uncomfortable, this is a fantastic pick. So do yourself a favor this weekend, guys. Pick one of the movies off of this list, grab your popcorn and your candy, and enjoy! And I want to give a huge, massive, enormous thank you to the Ghost Pirate crew, to you guys over on Patreon, and to the channel members over here. You guys mean so much to me. And if you'd like to help support this channel over on Patreon, there's a link down in the description. Or if you want to become a channel member and help support the channel over here, there's a button right down there that says join. But like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button. And remember, guys, horror can be fun. And if you enjoyed this, click right here to watch me talk about 10 more horror movies that I think you'll enjoy. And I'll see you guys next time.